I'm Jane Copier, and you're listening to Happy in the Middle, a podcast for Christian women who want to make the second half of life the best half. This podcast is all about helping women to reignite their spark and step into their divine power in order to create deep and connected relationships and also find that fulfillment and satisfaction they crave. So, if you're ready to grow, join me and learn how you too can overcome guilt, resentment, disappointment, and enjoy the fruits of creating a life well lived. Let's go. Hello, hello. Welcome, my friends. Welcome back to Happy in the Middle. Today's episode is number 102, The Painful Price of Keeping the Peace. How are you doing? Don't you just love November? I love that space between Halloween and Thanksgiving. It just feels like a really peaceful space. I love it. I went out for a walk this morning and our neighborhood is just so gorgeous right now. The pear trees that line our street they're so stunning. I love it. They're multicolored. And so we get this burgundy and the orange and the yellow and still a little bit of green. And oh my gosh, I just find so much joy walking through those leaves and feeling the breeze on my face, that cool, crisp fall air. I just find so much joy admiring these beautiful creations by our beautiful creator, and I can't get enough of it. It just puts me in the best mood. So I hope you're loving this season as much as I am. Real quick before I forget, did you sign up for my free coaching call yet? It's coming November 18th, and I would love to have you join me. Go to janecopier.com and save your spot right now before you forget. It's a great opportunity for you to get a taste of coaching, to come and see what it feels like for yourself, to ask a question or to submit a question and have it answered and help you gain some clarity, a different perspective. It's just so, so helpful. It's the process that has changed my life and changed hundreds of my clients' lives. It's just a beautiful, beautiful experience. So please come. It's November 18th. Again, you can sign up on my website at janecopier.com. I'll also post a link in the show notes. So go do that and then come back and listen, because if you are a people pleaser, I'm going to teach you everything you need today to know how to help you feel more confident and how to show up more honestly in your life. Because people pleasing can rob you not only of your own peace, but also of the joy that you could be experiencing if you were able to speak up more, to take up more space and to matter more in your life. Speaking of life, isn't it funny how life provides teaching moments for us? I swear this happens to me so often, but I really hadn't planned on sharing this topic today. I had a whole other episode planned. But yesterday, I began working with a new client and the subject of people pleasing came up. So I thought today would be a great day to talk about it on the podcast. And as life has it, of course, this came up for me in my own life last night. And I needed to follow my own advice, and I didn't. So this message is as much for you as it is for me. This is a tendency that I have struggled to overcome for myself. I'm so much better at it now, but it does still come up for me now and again. And so hopefully we'll all gain a little bit more courage and strengthen our resolve to stop trying to make everyone else in our lives emotionally comfortable and sacrificing our own emotional comfort at the expense. Okay, sacrificing our own inner peace. There is this painful price to be paid for keeping the peace. In fact, it is a delusion. We actually can't keep the peace, right? We delude ourselves into believing that we have that power, that control of managing other people, which is never true. That's other people's responsibility, as we talked about in last week's episode. The choice we're really making is to take the battle to ourselves, to suffer in our own minds, rather than grow into the maturity of honest relationship. My guess is if you are a peacekeeper, you already know this about yourself. Most of us kind of intuit, like, oh, yeah, I am this way. I am someone who doesn't like conflict, right? This pattern is usually created in childhood. But let's check in a little bit and see if you recognize any of these tendencies in yourself. Are you someone who avoids conflict? Do you work overtime to make everyone else happy? Are you constantly checking in with everyone else to make sure they're all good, right? Do you constantly tell yourself it's not worth it when you encounter a stressful confrontation, or you just remains silent, right? It's so important to recognize these behaviors in ourselves because keeping the peace can actually become a really painful form of self betrayal. It's a way of dishonoring our worth, our right to matter, to feel, to take up space in the world. And that is not the kind of peace that God wants for us. The pain of the peacekeeper is often hidden, right? We hold it inside. It's very disrupting on the inside. Outside, we look calm as a summer day, right? But boy, do we hide it well until we don't. And then when the frustration manifests, it often doesn't make sense to the people around us because it kind of surfaces after the event or the circumstance that triggered us. And then we look a little crazy. So, peacekeepers are often the ones who hold the family together, the ones who smooth things over. They absorb the tension. They say, it's fine, even when it's not. I hate that four-letter word fine, don't you? And as I said before, we often take on this trait at a young age. And it actually feels like a badge of honor for us because, we get a lot of encouragement for that behavior, right? People recognize our ability to smooth things over and they like that because often that means they don't have to deal with the part of them that's participating in creating the problem. We see this in children who have parents with really high expectations, right? They don't want to disappoint. We see it in children who come from chaotic homes where there might be a lot of contention or stress. We also see it in those who have real perfectionist tendencies or who are really afraid of experiencing failure or negative emotion. And like I said, there's a reward in peacekeeping. It's why we hang on to this role. We get good feedback. You're often praised for being the easy one, for being the good girl, the one who doesn't cause trouble. And you learn that love equals harmony, and harmony equals silence. It's a false narrative. On the outside, it looks like everything is fine. You're the good one, the helpful one. But inside, it's not fine. I love the scripture in Matthew 5, verse 9. Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." He didn't say peacekeepers. Notice he says the peacemakers. Peacemakers don't run from the truth. They actually bring truth in from a place of love. They create peace by facing the hard things and not avoiding them. There's a huge difference between keeping peace and making peace. Making peace means being honest. And as you bring peacekeeping tendencies into your adult relationships, there are some pretty harsh consequences. It makes you feel drained. It makes you feel invisible, resentful. Because every time you silence yourself to keep someone else calm, you lose a tiny piece of your own peace. That's a quiet suffering. There's a quiet suffering in that. And it often sounds like, I don't want to upset him, or she wouldn't understand anyway, so why bother, right? Or if I speak up, it'll just start a fight. But the truth is, that's not keeping peace, that's avoiding truth. And avoidance doesn't create peace, it creates pretending. I'll share just a little story of a woman that I worked with once. She came to me. She knew that this was a problem for her. And she said, "Jane, I just hate conflict. I'll do anything to avoid it." And she shared with me about her husband, how he'd make joking little jabs at her. They kind of like passive aggressive little jabs, and she'd just blow it off. He'd make plans without asking her. He'd just do it, without asking her opinion or talking to her about it. And she'd just let it pass. She'd let it go, right? He'd also favor one of their sons over the other and treat him very differently than he treated the other son. And it was really upsetting for her. And every single time she'd just swallow the frustration because she didn't want to fight. And that inner cancer really ate away at her to the point where she could hardly tolerate being with him, which is, of course, what led her to work with me. But as we worked together, she really realized something. She realized that her silence wasn't creating harmony. She wasn't feeling it. You could see it. It was obvious, right? It was creating distance from her husband, who she actually happened to really love, but couldn't respect because she felt disrespected. But she never stood for herself, right? So as she pulled away from him, in his mind, he thought she just didn't care about him anymore, didn't love him, right? Which would make him more aggressive. And for her, well, she thought he didn't notice that her feelings had changed. She thought she was keeping her anger well hidden. But they were both living these half truths, right? It took a major toll on the intimacy in their marriage. Peacekeeping might mask as selflessness, but it actually damages relationships because they're not rooted in reality. Think about that for a minute. When we don't show up honestly, the relationship that we are in is not real. It is not rooted in reality. True intimacy requires truth. And when one person constantly diminishes themselves, the relationship becomes a fraud. When you diminish yourself, here's what happens. You teach other people that your needs don't matter. And then over time, you start kind of believing it too, right? You become less confident. I really like this quote from Brene Brown. She said, "Clear is kind, unclear is unkind." So think about that for a second. When you hold back in order to avoid a conflict, you think you're being kind, but what you're actually doing is hiding the truth. And truth is where love lives, it's where it can grow. Peacekeeping is a connection killer. It's not true. I love the example of the Prince of Peace, Jesus Christ. I love the story about him in the temple overturning the tables. He wasn't violent, he didn't hurt anyone, but he was truthful. His actions were truthful. He wasn't keeping peace, he was making it. He knew that real peace couldn't coexist with pretense or exploitation. He stood for what mattered. In John 14:27, Jesus says, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid." Why doesn't he want us to be afraid? What is the fear he's talking about? I think it's talking about being dishonest, showing up halfway in our relationships. Worldly peace says, just stay quiet, don't stir things up. Christ's peace says, stand in the truth with love and courage. So, going back to the couple that I mentioned before, once my client understood where her peacekeeping tendencies came from and why she'd been operating in the way that she had, she made the conscious decision to step in rather than keep avoiding in her marriage. So she was able to become more courageous and she became more confident. And it just took like, honestly, it's breaking the habit. And then once you do that, it becomes so much easier, but you have to break in. So it took this honest, really shaky conversation to sort of start the healing of that tendency in her. But she learned how to say to her husband, look, I love you too much to keep pretending that this doesn't bother me. I love you too much. I value our relationship enough that I'm willing to bring this up and work through this with you so that we can love each other, so that we can enjoy each other. And of course, no one likes to be corrected, especially our spouse, but it was exactly what needed to happen and what really allowed true peace to start to grow between them. True connection. So let me share a few more real life examples I've encountered with my clients and just see if you recognize any of them in yourself. So, one example is, let's say your spouse makes a hurtful comment when you ask him how he likes your new jeans and you kind of just brush it off. You feel hurt, but then you tell yourself you're being mature for letting it go. But later you act really cold and withdrawn. Well, that's not maturity, right? That is not being the mature one. That's suppression. Okay. Another example is, let's say your adult daughter tells you that you're only able to see the grandkids if you don't bring up the topic of religion or God, which is a huge part of who you are. And instead of being honest, you act like it's all fine, but then you feel deeply hurt inside. Then you start avoiding her. Well, that's emotional distance disguised as peace, right? It's not really peace. Okay. And the last example, let's say at church you get asked to volunteer to serve again for something that feels a little bit overwhelming. And even though you're dealing with some really difficult private struggles and you feel physically and emotionally depleted, but you say yes to avoid disappointing anyone. And then you serve in that calling or in that capacity from a place of resentment instead of a place of joy and willingness, right? That's not spiritual practice. That's self abandonment wrapped up to look like saintly worship. So let's talk about how to step out of this tendency. I want to give you 5 new habits that you can practice. These really do help if you'll just try them, just try to incorporate them. Next time that you feel this urge to just sweep things under the rug, pick one and try it on. Now, full disclosure, you're not going to master this overnight, right? But the more that you pause and think about the situation that you're in and think through how you want to present yourself, how you want to show up, the better you'll get. So, the first habit is to name the fear. Most of the time, we don't speak up because of a fear. So you have to ask yourself, what am I afraid will happen if I tell the truth? Often, that's a fear of rejection or maybe disapproval. But notice this, that fear keeps you small. It keeps you out of alignment with your own soul, your own divinity, right? Can you imagine a divine being feeling fearful, right? That just doesn't compute. Most of the time, just bringing your fear to light and exposing it can be very, very freeing because we can see that it is just the brain's attempt to keep us safe. And safety isn't actually what is needed. Okay, the second habit is to redefine what conflict means. For most of us, conflict means something pretty scary. But the truth is, conflict really isn't a threat, it's information. What I mean by that is that it's two people being honest about what's real, right? When we engage in a conflict, this is different than contention, right? Contention is just anger, but conflict is a bit of a separation and it's finding our way back to each other when we don't agree. So when we engage in conflict from a place of love and a desire to create more intimacy, conflict creates connection. It really does because it reveals that the relationship is important enough to us to tolerate the discomfort of truth. Okay, the third habit is to ground yourself before you speak. And what I mean by that is just to settle down in yourself, to settle your emotions. So you pray, you breathe, you ask God to give you the right words, right? Empower yourself with a little heavenly help. Then, when you do find the courage to speak, keep it about you. Use those I statements that we've talked about before instead of accusing the other person. So, let's use the second example I gave of the mother and daughter. You could try saying something like, I understand why you're making this request and I'll honor it. But for me, it feels very painful. God is a huge part of our lives and who we are. And I feel like you're asking us to be an inauthentic version of ourselves for the kids. Now, of course, this isn't going to change your daughter's request. She is her own person. She wants what she wants. She is their mom. And if you want to see the grandkids, you might have to play by her rules. However, when you say something like that, when you respond that way, instead of closing yourself off, shutting your mouth, keeping the peace, instead of feeling distant and avoiding her, you've stood for yourself. You've stood for your beliefs. You've spoken what's true in your heart. You've shared the way that you feel, and you have allowed yourself to also have feelings and opinions. Okay. The fourth habit is to speak your truth gently but clearly. This can look like saying things like, I feel hurt when you cancel our plans without telling me. Or, I'd love to help, but I'm not available this time. Did you know you don't have to make excuses? Do you know you can just say, no, I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me right now? It's totally an option. Do it. Another example might be like, I need to talk about something that's been heavy on my heart, right? Just having the courage to bring something up. Clarity When combined with kindness, that's where your power is. Okay, and the fifth, and I think probably the most important habit, is to practice mattering. You matter. Your feelings, your voice, your limits, all of it matters. What do you think about yourself? Do you believe your opinions matter as much as other people's? Why or why not? Think on that. Work on building your self concept. And I love the process. I remember when I was doing this work for myself, I asked this question. I asked God, what do you think of me? And then I listened and I journaled on those answers. I journaled on that question. And what I discovered was that I am a divine being. I am a precious child of God. And you can have this affirmation. You can have this confirmation for yourself. Ask this question, what does God think of me? You are a precious child of God. Do you think that they created you not to matter? Of course not. It's absurd. Like, to think about that just sounds crazy. So find your true identity. Wear it like a glove. When you really know who you are, you will no longer tolerate that diminished position. You will rise. You will be an advocate for yourself as much as you are for other people. That's love. I love this quote by Glennon Doyle. She said, "Every time you pretend to be something you're not, you lose a little more of yourself. Stop asking what will keep everyone else happy and start asking what would make me honest." That's the heart of this work, trading harmony for honesty, which is actually what leads to true harmony. It's a beautiful, beautiful twist there. Okay, my friends, as the holidays arrive, you are going to have a lot of opportunities to practice this. So start now. This week, I really invite you to practice one small act of honesty, even if it makes you feel like you want to vomit, right? Speak up. Say what's true for you and say it with love. Say it with the motivation behind it that it's a desire to connect, right? Your motivation is everything. And when your motivation is to come closer to the people you love, they will feel it. It won't feel like a criticism. It will feel like an invitation. Okay? So speak up. Say what's true for you. Say it with love. Then process your discomfort. Remember that discomfort is just an emotion. And you have a 100% success rate of surviving all negative emotions. You can do it. Feel it without rushing to smooth things over. Don't give in to that urge to apologize for taking up space and mattering, right? Speak the truth and let God handle the outcome. Give it to Him. Because truly, peace built on pretending is not peace at all. I don't want that for you. I want you to feel like you matter, like you are worthy of taking up space. And you are, my friend, 100%. Okay, who do you know that you can share this episode with? Is there someone that you know who's a peacekeeper that you know is struggling? Please share. Please invite them into a better story for themselves. And also remember, I would love to see you at my next free live coaching call, Ask Jane, November 18th. There's a link in the show notes, or you can go to my website, janecopier.com, and sign up there. Send in your questions. I would love to answer any questions you have about the podcast or anything that's going on in your life. Send them to me and we'll address them on that call. It's going to be so fun. So I hope you'll join me again. You can sign up at janecopier.com. Just look for Ask Jane on that main front page. Okay, friends, until next time, keep showing up as someone who matters because you do. Love you all so much, and I will be with you next time. Bye now. Hey, if you are ready to get unstuck and make your midlife amazing, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. And I want to invite you to join my Empty Nest Academy, where you will learn how to transform your mind, your relationships, and your life. Come free yourself of regret and disappointment and be so much happier. Listen, sis, we've got one shot at this big, beautiful life. Let's make it amazing. Go to janecopier.com, that's JaneCopier.com, and sign up today. And if you're not sure what's right for you, book a free consultation with me and we'll talk it over together. And we'll make sure to get you on the path that serves you the best. See you inside.